Hello everyone, and welcome to our Health Hub Vienna Meetup event. My name is Julia, I'm Innovation Manager at Health Hub Vienna, and I'm excited to welcome you all here To the Sky at the Technical University of Vienna. We are delighted to be hosting our event here at this very beautiful venue, and I would like to thank the TU Wien very much for offering this opportunity to us. I also want to send out a warm welcome to our online audience and who will be following this event from different places all over Austria and in different countries as well. And at Health Hub Vienna, we drive innovation through collaboration and entrepreneurship. And our goal is to transform the healthcare system in Austria together with our partners and key stakeholders in the Austrian and European healthcare system. So we really like to bring people together and to create networks and start innovation projects. And we are happy to network with all of you today and would like to invite you to stay with us later tonight to get to know each other and to discuss healthcare together. To our online audience, please stay tuned as well, also after the event, as you will get the opportunity to network with each other in an online environment as well. So this meetup is on the topic of building effective networks in healthcare, and I'm super excited to hear from founders, doctors, and patient representatives how to make a platform business model a success. I'm looking forward to hearing the discussions on how those platform business models are changing healthcare and the life sciences. And we feel honored to have two distinguished keynote speakers with us today, as well as two experts in our panel discussion. In preparation to this event, we conducted a small survey within our healthcare ecosystem and with all of you on the use of platforms in healthcare. So let's look at our results. And I'm sure many of you saw our email where we were asking you to participate in the survey. And trust me, the results are quite interesting. So here we have the first question that we asked: have you ever used a digital health platform? And we found that about 70% of you have used a digital health platform before, but still about a third needs to warm up towards such a technology. And this result is quite surprising to us because our survey was, of course, mainly with people who work in the healthcare area. So it's interesting to see that even for people who are engaging with this topic, there's still a third who hasn't done so yet. And then we asked whether you have used a digital health platform to interact with your healthcare practitioner. And it seems like 60% haven't done so. And only 13% of people in our survey regularly use such platforms to interact with their healthcare practitioners. And we made the decision to split the no into two kinds of no. So one is like a no, but I would like to try. And the other one is a straightforward and determined no. And it looks like a quarter of respondents is not at all interested in engaging with the healthcare practitioners online. Which made me wonder, is it because of the healthcare practitioners, or maybe it's because of the platforms that are available to us? So all in all, I'm still happy to see that about 40% would like to try, and I also hope that events like these will also increase the interest in such a technology. Now, for those of you who want to build the next super successful digital health platform on their own, listen closely. Our respondents rated different important features that they would like to see in a digital health platform. And the top rated 3 features were that you can do an appointment booking between doctors and patients, that you have an opportunity to view your own personal health results, and also an opportunity to chat with healthcare practitioners, for instance, via telemedicine. Other aspects that are important when you want to design a successful and good platform is usability. So you have to consider that you have a good and intuitive user experience with the platform. Of course, data security and data ownership is a very important topic for most users, and that you have an interoperability between systems of hospitals, laboratories, and private practices. So now, after our short insights into the public opinion out here, it's time to get started with the event. I will quickly guide you through the agenda today. We will have 2 keynote speakers followed by a panel discussion. And you're free to ask questions after every keynote presentation and of course also after the panel discussion. So now let me introduce you to the first keynote speaker. I am happy to welcome Hanno Lipic, who is the CEO at Eversports. Eversports is a platform that brings sports providers, corporates, and athletes together, and so increases access to a healthy lifestyle through exercise. We are excited to have Hanno with us today, and as he will tell us more about his experiences and successes with platform business models. And yeah, thank you very much, Hanno. The stage is yours.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Hanno. I'm one of the founders of Eversports and the CEO of the company. And our mission is to make sports happen. And yeah, I want to tell you in the next 10 minutes all about our journey of the last almost 9 years. We basically started out with the question, how is it possible that you can book a hotel on the other end of the world within a couple of clicks? But if you want to book, for example, a tennis court in Vienna, it takes up to hours to get them. You need to call them. And yeah, that's how we basically started at Inits at the time. And we realized it's not only hotels that are being booked online, it's also flights, it's transportation, it's restaurants, it's massage studios, and many other services, but there was nothing in the realm of sports. And then we looked into the market and said, is that even a big market that we want to address? And basically, we found some studies on the market. I mean, that one we found later to be truthful here. But if you categorize the market, you have the mindful movement with yoga and Pilates and Barre and others, then the classic fitness. But you also have sports and active recreation in tennis, badminton, and so on, where we actually started our business. And if we look at the different user groups that we basically have in this market, it's the sports providers. And yeah, basically, maybe one of the first learnings, we thought we were going to build something like Booking.com for sports activities. And then we realized that this idea doesn't work. And the reason is that most sports providers at the beginning, when we addressed them and taught them about our idea that we want to make them online bookable, they showed us their big blocks of paper and their chalkboards, and they basically said, okay, so how am I going to get your booking in my chalkboard? And so we realized, okay, we need to give them a software to run the business first, and then we can build a marketplace where users can find it. So basically what I'm showing you is how it evolved over 9 years, because now if we think about sports providers, it's not as much about the administration part as it was in the beginning. Now we are really seeing, especially after COVID, that most of the sport providers are thinking about how they get people in their studios, in their sports centers, and how they can retain their customers. For the athletes and users, it's pretty much the same. It's about how do I find what I'm looking for in the fastest and easiest way, and in the future maybe also how do I find other people to do sports with me, what are my friends doing, and all this kind of stuff. And the latest addition to our platform is corporates. So also here we realize that many modern employers are looking into how can I have my staff and my employees be more active, and depending on how big the corporate is, they have the issue that somehow they have locations in the urban areas, in cities, but also sometimes they're out of cities, and sometimes they're multinational, and then you have to find something that works for all their offices, and that's also something we found quite interesting as a problem to solve. So what are we trying to do with Eversports? We're trying to to create a platform where we address all these problems. So for the sport providers to start and grow their business, for the users to find and discover what they're looking for, and for corporates to enable sports for their employees. And if we look at every segment by themselves, in the realm of the sport providers, it's about giving them the administration software, like I said it in the beginning. For the sports centers, it was about getting their courts bookable, and then they said, yeah, but I have many users, how can I communicate with them? So it was about, okay, we need to build a CRM. Then they're like, okay, I'm having invoices. Okay, we need to build a POS system. They want to get online bookings, online payments. So it's about the payment infrastructure you need to build. and the invoicing infrastructure, and then you realize when you go from sports centers to yoga studios and CrossFit boxes that the use cases are not as similar as you might think, and then you suddenly have to think about how can I create a membership where you can go once a week or twice a week, or where you have credits that roll over from 1 month to the next. So that's also one of the reasons why we realized that that was still an empty spot, because it's just not as easy as booking a hotel if you're in the realm of sports, but that also makes the problem quite exciting to solve. And by now we have around 3,500 providers that work with our software in 9 countries in Europe. And what we realized is that, talking about the platform and the idea again, the first thing that every provider that starts with us does is to invite the user base and say, hey, I'm working with Eversports, please start using the app and book us online on our widget or on the website of Eversports, because we don't charge for the customer base of our partners. And that's also one very important element in the flywheel, that basically if you start a business from zero, you have the chicken egg problem. But if you start with the provider side and find a way that they invite their clientele, you don't have the egg issue. You just need to get the chicken and it will lay the eggs by themselves. So, yeah, or eat the eggs. So that brings us to the next element of the flywheel. That's the marketplace. So I said we created a platform on the web. So that's actually quite a new version that I'm not embarrassed about anymore. So it's looking quite good now with a map, and you can have all kinds of filters where you say, okay, I want to start yoga, CrossFit, tennis, whatever it is. When do you want to do it? And then you see, okay, what kind of trial offers do they have? How do you get started? And by now, we have some 3.5 million users on the platform that have already placed a booking with us. And yeah, as said, the latest addition to our flywheel was that we started asking our users, hey, do you want your employer to subsidize your sport? Do you want your employer to basically help you pay for your sports routine? And that brings us to the Eversports Corporate, where we created a system where employers can say, I want to subsidize my employees with X euros per department, with X euros for the whole company, or with X euros per employee that they can use at whatever sports center or partner that they want to use it at. And then again, we realized that this fuels both elements, because some of the employees have never used Eversports before, so we get new users. And some of the employees say, yeah, it's super that you have 3,500 partners, but the one location where I want to do sport is not there. And that, again, helps us to address this situation by calling that sports provider and telling them, hey, Unica next door wants to send their employees to work out at your location. How about you join our network? And that proved to be a very powerful pitch, and actually much better than saying, hey, we have great software or better software than the competition. So, yeah, COVID is obviously not a good thing if all the sports centers and studios close at one point. So it was a near-death experience for us. But the good thing was that we managed to react quite fast. So within a week of the lockdowns, we provided the first online streaming feature for our sports centers, especially in the yoga and boutique space. It is actually quite easy to join a routine from home. So you don't need a lot of props. You can roll out your mat and join a class. And suddenly we had more bookings than we had in January, which is usually always the best month. And we're like, okay, well, what is happening? We thought we're going to die, and now suddenly it's better than before. That makes no sense. But that's how it was, because I think the world just became a bit more digital during the last 2 years. And like all of you probably didn't have as many Zoom meetings 2 years ago than we have now. The same trend emerged at that time, and we'll hear if that's also true for medicine. I would hope so. But yeah, the online bookings, which is the core element of our business, increased nicely over time, and actually we managed to triple our business in the last 2 years during a very difficult time still. And yeah, short about how we started to grow our business. At the beginning, we started in Austria, here in Vienna, as mentioned, with an incubator program with INITS. We managed to get accepted in the accelerator program of Techstars in a year later. expanded the business to Germany and Switzerland. And then we entered the boutique space. So first it was only about court bookings, tennis, beach volleyball, soccer, everything where you need to book a court for a certain time. With the boutique space, it became a lot more complex because then suddenly you have trials and classes and trainings and workshops and retreats and also a new world where I wasn't participating in before, like yoga. I didn't see myself in a room doing that. But it was very interesting, and from there on we started to focus more on the platform and on integrating other players of the environment. So in sports there are also aggregators. Some of you might know MyClubs or ClassPass as an international example, or GymPass in a more corporate space. So we created APIs so that they can connect to our customer base. Then COVID hit. It was about online streaming, video on demand, and now we are at this point where we realized that the time is up. And I have 1 more minute. So yeah, we realized it's about connecting other locations through APIs. We don't need to be the software for anyone anymore. The world is more digital, and that's what we are currently doing. And yeah, just a short look on how the bookings evolved over time. So we're now at 1.2 million, and as said, 3,500 locations in Europe, and quite happy about that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Hanno, for this very insightful keynote. Now we have time, a few minutes for questions. So if any one of you in the audience would like to ask Hanno something, now it's your moment. Move over there.
Hi. What is your funding model? So your finance model?
Oh, okay. Probably best to go back here. So for the manager, we charge a classical software as a service fee. So our sports centers pay a monthly fee to have the administration software. For users, the service is free, but when they pay online, we charge an online transaction fee, but also there it's quite normal because Visa and PayPal obviously charges something if we provide that service. And if we bring a user that's new, and that's basically how we start every time we add someone new to the CRM of one of our partners, we ask, how did you find this location? And if they answer with Eversports, we get a commission for a certain period of time. And then we say, hey, you deserve that customer. It's a loyal customer. It's yours now. And that are mainly the 3 monetization models that are behind Eversports.
Thank you. Yeah, very inspiring. I was actually wondering, so thinking of the beginnings of your journey with Eversports, when you transitioned from a national level to an international level, which were some challenges that you had and how did you overcome them?
So I think internationalization from an Austrian perspective has 2 phases. So the usual most natural step is Germany, and I would say that that was relatively easy because you keep the language, you keep the currency, and you keep more or less the same culture, I would say. I mean, obviously they're different and we are better, but apart from that, they're quite similar. When we went to the Netherlands or to France, it was a total different story. So that was much harder. We realized that selling in France with an Austrian that lives in Paris for a bit and doesn't really speak French didn't work. Then starting with French speakers that don't know the product really well but need to sell to a studio that runs at 10 years on the competitor software also doesn't work because it really takes some time to teach the people. So there it really starts to get more difficult. And we tried 2 different ways. So one was that we acquired a competitor in the Netherlands. So that obviously helps. Then suddenly you have friends and people speaking the language on site or in the city. And for France, we took the hard way and we realized, okay, the German speaking don't work. We need the native speakers and they don't work because they don't know the tools. So we had them long training in German speaking markets and then sent them back and then slowly it started to work. But that's, I'm still not 100% sure what's the better way, but yeah, that were our learnings there.
We can do one more question.
If you could maybe follow up on the challenges, but from the technical point of view, what are the biggest challenges or what have been the biggest challenges on the technical part?
on the technical part in the sense of internationalization or in general? So first of all, you start with the MVP, and at that time we had something like WordPress. It's called Drupal, and at that point, at a certain point, the developers or the CTO we got on board said that this is gonna hit the wall, and so we needed to start from scratch. So that was the biggest first hurdle, because we had customers, and then we needed to switch the engine while going on the highway, more or less. And then we thought we had something that's new and scalable, and then you realize it's not. At the moment you grow, you suddenly in winter, and the online streaming, as I mentioned, the bookings went up and the server crashed. And also scaling didn't help because the queries were not optimized, because optimization was not a thing in growth. So yeah, I think you have all kinds of growth pains over time that you cannot foresee. And we just got really much better in learning from mistakes and trying to avoid them, and it's still magical how they still keep reappearing, but at a slower rate, I would say. And I think that's the best you can hope for.
Okay. Thank you very much, Hanno.
Thank you.
And yeah, now I would like to continue on with our second keynote speaker. Our second keynote speaker is Janice Pereira, Chief Engagement and Growth Officer at MedShare. Janice came to MedShare through an unusual route. She had a first career in biotechnology, trained doctors in Burkina Faso, led the community and content team at Kahoot, and became well known in the UK as an influential blogger. Her role at MedShare combines digital engagement and growth strategies with her passion for healthcare. Thank you very much, Janice, for coming all the way from the UK today to be with us. And the stage is yours now.
Thank you very much. And it actually is my very first time in Vienna, and it's very, very exciting. Thank you. So yes, hi, I'm Janice. I'm the Chief Engagement and Growth Officer at MedShare, and as Julia said, that my experience is a bit of an unusual mix. So I have to say, sort of being able to work with the likes of Disney, Pixar, and Marvel, and Kahoot has been definitely very, very fun indeed, but my role at MedShare is equally fun. My focus is on bringing everything that I've learned from different industries to healthcare, so thinking about what makes people tick, what builds communities, and what grows platforms. I realize I'm not standing on the X, so sorry to people online. So MedShare was created to make it easy for doctors to share knowledge by discussing the cases that they come across in their everyday clinical practice. So we started with a really small but highly engaged community of doctors, about 1,000. And as you can see, we've actually grown quite a bit. We now have over 2 million members who are using the platform across every different specialty and subspecialty in every country. And I've been asked to speak about how that growth came about. I forgot to click these things, I'm so sorry. So the most successful businesses are not really looking to create something new. They're looking at something that already exists and trying to make it better, faster, more impactful, more seamless, a little bit like Hanno talked about earlier with Eversports. So in medicine, likewise, there's an existing ecosystem of people who are coming together to share knowledge, to improve patient outcomes, to save more lives. So for example, doctors are already discussing cases with one another. This is nothing new. It's part of their everyday clinical practice. So they come together to reflect on challenging cases. They come together to discuss different approaches. They also join medical societies and they go to conferences. So they do this to connect with other doctors with shared interests, to learn from world experts, to hear about the new medical advances, new data, and so on. So what's so incredible about the MedShare platform is that actually we're able to empower that existing ecosystem. So this has been a really crucial part of our growth. The platform makes it really easy for doctors to come together online in a way that's really efficient and also protects their patients' privacy. But it also makes it possible for them to share their knowledge much further than their usual connections. So I've just got a few examples here from the platform. So they can use MedShare to connect in groups, and there are hundreds of different groups on the platform for different conditions and subspecialties and regions. And the one that you can see on the screen there is for neuromuscular disorders, so it connects all the different kinds of healthcare professionals who would be involved in managing such patients. So you're going to see in one group neurologists talking to pediatricians and rehab specialists and nurses and so on. They can also discuss any kinds of clinical images on the platform, so X-rays, angiograms, CT scans, and so on. They can learn from content that's being developed by key opinion leaders and by medical societies. They can build their professional networks, and of course, they can post their own cases as well. So most importantly, though, every single action that they're taking on the platform is actually helping the platform itself thrive and evolve and grow. So we tend to describe MedShare as an app, but actually sometimes it suggests more of a one-way technology. A doctor might use an app to look up symptoms or prescribing information. With a platform like MedShare, actually every person who's using the platform is helping to shape the platform at the same time. So let's say Dr. Braga, who you're going to meet later, looks at a surgical case on the platform. So he looks at that case, he reflects on whether surgery was actually necessary at that particular time, what might have been done differently. Maybe he reflects on some of the complications that the surgical team may have encountered. And then maybe it prompts him to look at his own cases in a slightly different way. He's an experienced surgeon, so he congratulates the team on their good work, he adds his insights and his comments, and then he takes a moment and he posts that case on Twitter or on LinkedIn and so on. So other surgeons will come along and they'll see that case, and they'll go and they'll look at that, they'll add their own insights as well, maybe from a hospital with different resources, or maybe from a different specialty, or somewhere with different guidelines. They also then reach out to colleagues on WhatsApp and Twitter and so on, so this continues to grow. So the result is this really exciting self-perpetuating engagement and growth. And it's not growth for the sake of numbers, it's meaningful, impactful growth. And of course, being a technology company, we have features throughout the platform that keep on nudging those positive behaviors. So we have safe links, so that when doctors want to share something on a platform like Twitter, they can do so in a safe manner that blurs the patient details. We can incentivize knowledge sharing through CPD accreditation and so on. And we make it really, really easy for them to add their insights right from their smartphone. So we talked about the ecosystem. It's not just doctors in the ecosystem. Earlier I mentioned societies and conferences. So these organizations are continually looking to engage and educate their members and their delegates. They develop these really incredibly well-researched learning materials, and they bring in world experts to share their insights and to talk about medical evidence. They encourage compliant peer-to-peer learning. So we make it really, really easy for those societies to actually become a meaningful part of the ecosystem. So we provide them with groups on the platform, and I can talk about this a little bit more later. Groups on the platform that are specifically designed to make it easy for all of their members to come together as a whole, a little bit like Hanno talked about in the sports industry, bring them all in together, and then also giving them the tools that they need to reach and educate their members and to amplify their content beyond their own membership using the platform. So now we have this even more powerful virtuous cycle for growth. Okay, so now we have our technology and we have our core community. We have some interesting cases. We have our medical societies and their content as well. And this gives us a really solid foundation and some powerful organic growth. This is exactly the sort of thing that you want to amplify. So let's say an expert or a medical society in the UK develops some learning materials around monkeypox, and they add in some photos from some real clinical cases. So the very same day, we can adapt that content and we can combine it with some really clever targeting on Facebook or on LinkedIn, for example. And we can use that to reach doctors and nurses and community health workers in any country. The content is really useful to them, so they in turn invite their networks to post their comments and add their insights and to bring in their local medical societies as well. So effectively, MedShare is driving even more growth by taking the very best content from the platform and then amplifying that to doctors all around the world. So how do we do this? I'm not going to lie, it's really tricky. So if we posted a really fascinating clinical image on Instagram, the kind of surgical image that would actually get the attention of Dr. Braga here, actually it would definitely get the clicks, it would definitely get the views, it would definitely get signups, but protecting patients is really important, so we are not going to do that. So instead we need to be creative. Sometimes we kind of even need to take a starring role in some of the ads when we kind of talk about the case rather than actually showing the case. But essentially, we're going to create content that's inspired by the cases that are on the platform and bring people in that way. So we then use that kind of content to reach people who appear based on the information that they've put on their profiles and how they behaved on certain social networks. We would reach people who appear to be healthcare professionals. And doctors are people too, so you're going to find them on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and even TikTok, maybe even especially TikTok. Okay, so I started by talking about ecosystems, and the exciting thing about the MedShare platform and about platforms like Eversport, the idea that we get to actually look at an existing ecosystem and think about ways to power that and make that better is unbelievably exciting. And the result, as I said earlier, is growth, not for the sake of the numbers, but meaningful, impactful growth. Thank you very much. I must have spoken very, very quickly because I'm finished much more quickly than I thought. Thank you.
Yes, it was very perfect timing, actually.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Janice, for your presentation and for introducing us to MedShare. So again, we have even 6 minutes for questions. So please, whoever has the first question can start.
Yeah, so you showed us that doctors can upload their pictures of whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes if this is an X-ray, can be a very big file, and it's also very difficult to transform because the file has a certain format. And how are you handling this? Because you will have like a big server farm or.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So we have a secure built-in camera in the app. So they can take a photograph or a video in the app. That's actually the quickest and easiest way to do that. So they take their photo, and then built into there, as soon as they've got a photo uploaded, and that goes straight to our secure servers, so we take care of that. And as soon as we've done that, that prompts them to confirm that they have the right consent for that image. And then they also have some image editing there that they can just do with their finger to remove any, the hospital ID or the name and things like that from the file. So it makes it really, really easy for a doctor to do that in 2 or 3 minutes. They've posted their X-ray and they've shared it with whoever they want to share it with. Same for videos, angiograms and so on.
I'm coming from Poland. The average age of the surgeon in Poland is, I think, around 60. This group is kind of like a little bit resistant to change and innovation. Do you see it as a challenge? Can you maybe share a little bit more about the age groups or the innovators, or it doesn't matter actually within or how do you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because actually even a few years ago people weren't as maybe weren't using social media and using sort of apps and so on as much in different age groups, and now I think things are really changing. We get different kind of behaviors on the platform. So there's some people who are let's say if you have a more experienced surgeon or somebody who's kind of got less experience on social, for example, they are maybe a little bit more reluctant to post until they've got a real story to tell. So they're going to create something and it feels a bit more meaty when they're doing that. So it's kind of more of a, they'll describe their case much more carefully and they'll think about it before they post. So they tend to post much less frequently. And sometimes we kind of work with them and actually give them a little bit of hand-holding along the way and just sort of nudge them and a little bit hand-holding for some of them, but actually usually it's, they're quite familiar with all the other platforms now. You tend to see junior doctors posting much more often. I think probably it's the same thing as on other platforms, to be honest. There was a lady here with a question. He was going to make a comment about age.
Is your data neatly structured, and is it your goal to use AI or machine learning to learn from your content inside of the app?
So that's a really interesting question. So that we actually have some really We have some really exciting work going on right now. It's not on my team, so I can't really speak about it intelligently, but there's a team who are looking at the different patterns in the data. So like what are the different frequencies of words and how often do those words appear together. And so they're looking to see, are there certain trends? Are there things that tend to be discussed together? And then if there's a change, then actually that might signal something, act as a bit of an early warning system, for example. So let's say if you think back to when COVID first started, and you had a lot of doctors who were talking about cough and fever. So if you have the kind of that sort of baseline of cough and fever, and then suddenly people start also saying anosmia or loss of sense of smell, then you can kind of use AI to kind of pick up those differences. So we're starting to work on that in the business, but not on my team.
Tell us a little bit more about the business model and what is the motivation to engage on this platform?
What's the motivation for a doctor to engage on the platform?
Yeah.
I guess it probably depends on the different kind of where they are in their career, right? So you have, let's say, if you're a junior doctor, if you're just starting out, or a clinical medical student even, the idea that you can go onto a platform and then instantly you've got access to be able to see 40,000, 50,000 clinical images and sort of be able to look at all those different cases and see the discussions by other doctors. You're learning so much more and getting so much more exposure than you would in your normal practice. So for them, it's for the most part, it's about kind of they're learning from experts and they're learning from having that exposure. If you get somebody who's maybe sort of more experienced, maybe for them it's more about demonstrating that they're a leading voice in that specialty. So sharing their knowledge, sharing their expertise. So again, it very much it depends on where people are in their journey. In terms of the business model that you asked about, basically, so we, on my side of the business, it's about connecting the doctors and making it easy for them to connect in groups and so on, and bringing in their medical societies. We also have a commercial arm who work with pharmaceutical companies, for example, who will provide funding for independent medical education. So we have these sort of two arms, which helps the business thrive and grow.
So we have one last question, please.
Hello. I would like to thank you for your presentation. It was really great
Thank
and
you.
a really interesting product. And actually, I was really inspired in the question about the fact that it's an international community. And as we know, the medical guidelines internationally really differ, and also the products that are accepted in certain countries versus not. And I was wondering whether you have also like an annotation or some sort of a moderation of the groups where maybe there are differences in terms of practice, and you could explain or annotate, or like, this doctor is from Poland, this doctor is from the United States, they cannot use the same drugs.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was going to say that's a really good point, because there are people from all over the world, and the access to resources is different, but also the guidelines will be different in different areas. So one thing, it's exciting that they can all learn from each other. But you do, on the platform, everybody has their profile. So they'll have their bio, and it also says where they're from, where's their place of work. So let's say if somebody posts something, you can read that with the context of where they're based and where they're practicing. So there is that kind of element of kind of understanding who you're learning from or who you're interacting with.
So we have one last question, the very last one now.
Quick question: are your users and the data they provide, is this somehow validated? How do you make sure there's no abuse, there's no fake data, and there's no, if you read through threads on Facebook on pretty common topics, there's conspiracy theories, there's a lot of nonsense happening, and now you have a context of X-rays being uploaded, and is there risk? How big is the risk of abuse in many directions, actually?
Again, that's a really interesting question. I think there's some kind of self-moderation going on. So there's when people post, they're doing so under their professional name and their place of work, and so we tend to sort of see good behavior on the platform. Let's say if there was a case where somebody posted something and it wasn't maybe it wasn't right or wasn't according to the guidelines and so on, we do have some extra steps. So for example, somebody could report a post and then it comes down right away and gives us time to have a look at that and see if there was a reason that that was reported. And we have a team as well who are looking and doing kind of a check to make sure that that's not happening. But otherwise, you see a little bit like you would see on other platforms where the content that is good and valuable bubbles up to the top, and there's threads on other things that maybe there was a different sort of discussion or discussion down an unhelpful route, where again the doctors who are commenting on that case, you would follow the whole thread actually.
Okay, thank you so much, Janice. Thank you all for the very interesting questions. So we will continue with the agenda. First, a few words to our online audience. So to everyone who is with us online, our speakers' LinkedIn profiles will be shared with you. So if you would like to get in touch, connect, and ask any questions, Hanno and Janice are both happy to hear from you. And now we will progress with our panel discussion. The panel discussion will be led by Irene Fiake, who is the CEO of INITS and Managing Director of Hub Vienna. And yeah, I will now hand over to Irene, and who will introduce the panel to you.
Sorry to the audience online, in particular, the physical audience probably did hear me. Again, welcome, Andrea, Vice President of Telemed Austria. Next, I would like to ask onto the panel Anita Kinesberger. She is a patient advocate. That's her primary role, but also chair of Childhood Cancer International Committee Europe. Thanks for coming and thanks for representing the important point of perspective that we all need to consider if we talk about healthcare. And thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And of course, I would like to ask Janice onto the panel and Hanno. You know them already, and we will like to continue the discussion together with you also. Anita, I would like to start with you. Everybody in healthcare says they would like to put the patient into the center. My question to you as a patient advocate, do we? And what is your opinion about how can we do that? How can we get better in putting the patient really into the center?
Thank you, Irene, for this very important question for me, because of course, as patient advocate, we are more or less those who are really strict in answering this question. I would say, no, we don't do that. We don't do it. The platform models we have seen today, it's a very, very big opportunity to do this much more in future, because as we know, the end users are the patients, could be, so should be. So, I mean, in your case, it's the user who should really know what you are doing. I have not known about, so for me it was really good to hear. I know much more about those platforms. They are available in the field of the medical part. So I would say when you ask me how could we do that, you know, we speak about patients, they're sick and they are not able to do this from the beginning when they get a real diagnosis, but they are not able to do this. So we are here to do this with them, for them, to really say, if you involve us from the beginning in especially developing platforms like this, because I know many, many platforms on the EU level, they are there, no one knows, and patient advocates are not involved in developing them. So because we have to use it in the end and to know. And for instance, one very good example, to make it very short, is Europe, I would say from the political commitment, it's very well done. The Commission, the EU Commission, wants to put the patient in the center, especially in cancer. The next 7 years, there is a big program on this. And you don't get any money if you don't put patients in the center, if they are not involved in everything, in research, innovation, diagnosis, treatment, and care, everywhere. You have to take them on board, otherwise you are not successful. It's not what I would say, the national, health is a national competence, and breaking it down to the national level, this is for me the most difficult part. In Austria, we are very far behind in involving patients in all these steps where it would be needed. So this is my first comment.
Thank you very much. Janice, your platform, I believe, does not include patients. It's the patient data.
I'm so sorry, Anita.
No problem. Yeah. But why? And how do you prevent that?
So yeah, again, I'm very sorry, Anita. But yes, patients are not allowed to be on the platform. It's really important for doctors to have a secure space where they can have those discussions and learn, and also have very candid discussions with each other about different approaches and so on. In terms of how we make sure that happens, we have a very strict verification process. So when people sign up for the platform, they provide a number of details about themselves. They provide their real name, their real place of work, and then they also specify what their role and their specialty actually are. And we check those details. We have a big offshore team who is checking each one of the sign-ups to make sure that they actually are verified health professionals. Often we ask them to send in some ID as well. So there's a little bit of a lag before they get full access to the platform, but it's really important to have that step.
Oh, thank you very much. Andrea, you're a medical doctor. You as a medical doctor, what do you need in order to really interact with the platform? What lures you in? What does the platform need to show or do in order for you to engage really? Yeah.
How much time do I have? Am I on?
Yeah.
How much time do I have? No, this
Not
is
much.
No, I know. No, it's a challenging question because I think one thing was just now a little bit just hit upon, which I think needs to be clarified. One thing is which kind of platform we have. On one part we have professional platforms, as you have, which means there you have the interaction between medical professionals on whatever level this may be. On the other hand, you have what this is actually the teleconsile part, and then you have the teleconsultation part, which is more the interaction between, let's say, laypersons being somebody looking for information or being a patient, the interaction with a medical professional of whatever level this may be. So these are two things which are sometimes are mixed up, and what I think is very important. There's a big difference in what actually people seeking for medical information or behind problems or try to find out, I don't know, get some advice or maybe even treatments between what we professionals need. And these are two completely different things. One thing on the lay side, talking about patients looking for information, my arch enemy, not only mine, is Dr. Google, okay? So we need to have qualified platforms, and it's very, very difficult to find platforms which have adequate information and have a good access and are known. Okay, I think this is one of the biggest challenges. Does anybody know how many health apps there are right now, downloadable?
300K in Europe.
Who bids more? When Sotheby's here, who bids more? Okay, we're close to about 1 million health apps, just the apps. Not talking about all the platforms. So this is something which nobody can actually oversee in any sense. Talking about the medical or the professional side, There, it also, again, depends. You know, there are maybe things which you find directly in your environment, your ecosystem, your network, which you use because you know it, because it's something, your hospital, your clinic, or whatever your specialty uses. And then there's a whole bunch of other good stuff we don't know about, okay? So there's the access problem, which comes back to your question. One thing is to know about it. Same thing you said. You have to know that they exist. And then the quality is the other thing. And one thing which is also very much underestimated, a lot of the platforms or a lot of the tools which you find are built technically. They come from the tech side. And they forget one thing, not only to center it on patients, but also center it on the medical professional who's going to have to use it. And one thing, you were saying 60-year-old, or your surgeons in Poland, I know a couple of younger ones, by the way. You're not going to die of surgeons, a little bit, maybe not totally. One thing which is forgotten, that the medical professionals, they are very savvy. Technical surgeons are technical, so they have maybe a little more access to it than other disciplines have. But on the other side, you have to think, how is your work style? And so the platforms which are more successful are the ones actually coming with the needs for the medical professionals or for the patient side, and not being built up on a technical thing. So to put it in a short thing, I think that to respect more actually what does the people using it, not just because it's a fancy cool thing, but what is it actually, what needs, what problems, solve problems, and not solve technical issues.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrea. Hanno, in your case, it's in the case of employers offering sports activities to employees, it gets even more complicated because you have not only the people who need to do sports or want to do sports and those who offer sports activities, but you have some kind of additional player in the game. Can you explain us how this works and what makes all three of them on board, really?
Yeah, it's a new topic for us. So I'm not, I cannot tell the success story here yet. We have some early signs that we are going in the right direction. But what we saw is many ways that don't work. So we iterated, I think, through 7 or 8 failures or things where we realized that they're not working well. And I think some of the components we found that made the ones that are currently happy with it is that that we found a model where we really try to say how can we create a win-win-win for all the ones that are involved. So you have the employees, you have the employer, and you have also the sports centers, and they are all our customers. So there cannot be any scenario where one of them loses. So we thought long and hard how we can make this possible, and from the employer perspective, what we found out works really well is that we say, okay, if you offer something like a budget of X euros per employee, and that employee doesn't use it, you don't pay it. That really works well, because then they know we are incentivized only if they use it. And then again, I think the hypothesis we hopefully all share is that a certain level of movement and sport is good for everyone and contributes in a positive way to health. Then we know, or the employer knows, okay, it's in our interest that what we offer actually gets used, that we have exciting offer, that we have good offer, that we have a variety of offer, and that I think is the component we found makes it most successful. But we also realized talking to a CrossFit box or a yoga studio or a sports center is a totally different ball game than talking to Telekom Austria or Unica to find your way through a corporate and find the one who can actually take a decision takes much longer and yeah, is a different ballgame, so to speak.
But you are an SME and not a corporate. As far as I know, you also offer to your employees some sports activities. So what do you think? Is it only corporates that are your customers, or can it also be SMEs? In particular, after COVID, you know, also SMEs must be interested in getting their people somewhere doing sports more intensely, more
yes,
easily.
absolutely. So I think it's again how do you acquire customers, and for outbound, for the actual effort to go out there, I think it makes sense to target bigger ones. for the way I mentioned, a little growth hack that we found is that we ask people, hey, do you want your employer to subsidize you? And then we get companies of all sizes, so anything from the single employee to companies with 10, 20 people. And then obviously we show them what we've got. And I think here is the interesting part, that usually only big corporates are able to negotiate deals with sports centers. So someone like Erste Bank, they can say, dear John Harris, we have 7,000 employees. We would love to get a better deal on the membership, and they will have an open ear and probably make a good offer. But if the company comes and says, hey, I have an advertisement agency and we are 50, would like to get a better deal for the 5 of us that want to go to your location, they're not going to even talk to them. And I think that's our role here, that we can say, okay, we negotiate one deal with John Harris, and everyone that joins the corporate program can use it. And I think especially for the small ones, that's the benefit that we can deliver as a platform.
That's a deal maker. Yeah. Janice, how do you onboard doctors? How do you approach them? How do you lure them onto the platform? What tools or partners do you use?
How do we lure them?
Yeah.
In terms of tools and other platforms, one of the things that's been really interesting is looking at sort of existing platforms like social media. So, for example, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, places where doctors are already discussing, and that space has changed a lot in a very short time. So, for example, on Facebook, we can. I showed that picture of me on an ad, but for example, if we have some cases and content that's inspired by those cases, we can use targeting and essentially deliver ads with those that kind of really interesting content that people are hungry for, and then bring them onto the platform like that. They maybe see one case that they're interested in, and then they see that there's more content there. They see that there's other people they can follow. There's other doctors with different kinds of experience. So then they're going to start to explore the platform and kind of essentially sort of, they've come in through that one ad, but then they're in, and they start to then invite their colleagues. So there's that little bit of onboarding through the social networks. We also work with medical societies, as I said, where we'll have some discussions with the medical society, and then we'll work with them to demonstrate what the benefits are to the doctors and to the society, and then we'll work with them to bring their doctors all on board, and we'll essentially, usually we'll set up a few calls where we demonstrate the platform, we demonstrate different areas, different styles of writing cases, or different kind of features that might be particularly of interest to them. But that we approach it in different ways, I guess, depending on whether they're coming in as an individual or through their medical society.
Yeah. Thank you. Anita, you see a lot in Europe. Is there any domains, areas where you see platforms performing better than other areas, or platforms performing better because they are structured in a different way? Do you see some trends, patterns that you recognize, what works, what doesn't work?
Yeah, we do see this now, because it's already more or less for 10 years now that is really going very well in this direction, that we as patient advocates are very in favor to understand what is there. But I think that we have, in our field, we have to divide into different types. One is that we have to put the data there. So platforms where we really are encouraged to put all the existing data there to find things what we have never known about. But childhood cancer is a very good example. A lot of data, thousands of data are out there, but they are never ever somewhere collected to find things what we would really want to know. After 45 years of a very good treatment in childhood cancer, we want to know and understand better, understanding cancer. So where to put all this knowledge, data? So patients really want to do this. They want to give their data there. Of course, GDPR conform, everything is good, but this is one type of platforms, and this is developing very, very well with the help. And I'm not there as a promoter from the EU. I'm not from the political side, but it's really an effort.
So the European health data space plays a role there.
For instance, yes. So There are a lot of effort is there. We have to see how to implement this on a national level, and that we are still involved. The other thing is to find things what would be really needed. For instance, we are involved in a very big EU project where we have to create a platform on our own to put all existing materials there for long-term childhood cancer survivors, that they find everything, guidelines, what they need for their long-term care, follow-up care, everything what exists and is needed if you survive a disease like this. There are very good initiatives, for instance, on rare disease, European reference networks. A platform exists, but it's about what I like so much about it's really the knowledge should travel, not the patient. So, and I think if patients would know what you are doing, they would be very quiet, that the healthcare professionals are really sharing their knowledge, and because I think this would be so great that people really understand, but sometimes they don't trust anymore in the individual healthcare professional. So if they would know this, so I think we have to promote it. Good also to tell patients, this is there, we speak about you. And this is so.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah, yeah. You can kick it off tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Genuinely, I just want to say, I mean, that's a really interesting point, because actually, for them to know that they're not speaking to one individual, they're speaking to an individual who's seeking insights from a whole community of people. I think that's very. It must be very reassuring for them.
Yeah, I think I'm sure.
Janice, you also did, as Med Chair, you did a project with the Austrian Development Agency. What did you do there, and what was your learnings? Did you learn anything about the Austrian healthcare system?
Sadly, I didn't actually. This is a project that was really, it was really amazing. It was very overwhelming in some ways, because this was actually to do with COVID education, and it came about right at the very, very start of the pandemic. And if you remember, if you think right back to sort of, March, April, a couple years ago, it was a really difficult time for everybody all over the world, and we were really struggling in the UK in terms of the healthcare and kind of how do you know whether something actually is COVID? What do you do what was prevention? What do you do to kind of diagnose and manage patients? What do you do when something escalates? What if somebody has already some existing issues that they're dealing with? What do you do? So we were looking at all these problems and then started thinking, actually, we're sitting there in the UK with all these amazing resources around us and running water and so on. And then if you think about the rest of the world, and they're dealing with this as well, but without the same access to resources, the same access to education. And there's some areas where our doctors on the platform were actually emailing and saying, it's great, the whole hand washing thing, but I have no running water. And so one of the things that we did with the Austrian Development Agency was that they made it possible they provided a grant for us to be able to develop some medical education very, very quickly for us to disseminate across the whole world, so with a particular focus on Middle East and Africa. So it was I think it reached something like, I'm going to guess sort of 350,000 people. I can't quite remember the numbers, but it was a really interesting reach. But there were 100 different teaching cases that were all across from kind of prevention and diagnosis and management and emerging therapies. As kind of case discussions, as well as some articles, and we had the team who were kind of looking at all the different papers and the data every single morning and condensing that into something that was just quickly available. And if you imagine the work that went into that, but the people on our team who were doing that from home while they were also worried about their colleagues and their friends and their families, and it was just, being able to work with the ADA on that kind of project was so amazing. And it opened the door for us to be able to do sort of similar projects in sickle cell and leprosy and malaria and so on, which has been, so it's been really, really interesting kind of transition for us.
Mm. Yeah, if you reach 350,000 persons, that's doctors, so how many patients did you reach?
Oh, yeah.
That's really amazing numbers, yeah, congratulations. Andrea, you said that there's too many apps out there, too many platforms. Is this true? What is it about the quality, the number? Are they not good enough? What do the entrepreneurs amongst us do wrong or right? How can we solve this so that all the capacity that is out there is really used and bringing benefit to the patients in the end?
You bring me out of my job if I tell this to everybody right now. No, joking.
Sharing, yeah, we know that.
Yeah,
sharing know-how.
Exactly. No, it's a joke. Maybe one thing, which this is one of the reasons also why we founded Telemed Austria a couple of years ago, to bring actually together the healthcare community with the industry, with universities, University of Applied Sciences, providers, entrepreneurs, to actually get to know each other and have a common network actually to discuss and to share these kind of things. This is one of the most important things. To answer your question, yes, I think there are too many. It doesn't mean that some of them may be of high value, but the thing is, again, a lot of these things, this is the way healthcare works, and this is not, I'm not, pointing the finger at anybody, but the thing is, okay, I have my personal interest, rare diseases, diabetes. Oh, I should have to count once how many diabetes apps and things and appliances, and I'm on so many of these venture platforms and stuff, and it's incredible how many good ideas and how many good approaches, initiatives come. The thing is, they're always kind of like little islands. Okay, they come from something which I maybe have experienced, or something which I don't know I have grasped upon. Maybe it's also something which concerns myself, and then I start to do something. Okay. And then you tend to be a little bit, focused on this part of the thing and forgetting what are the real needs outside. This is one thing. The other thing is that we're pretty bad, congratulate on that, pretty bad on sharing, even though the medical community has been sharing knowledge on silver platter, med-based, all these kinds of things, sharing literature all the time, and what we do on conferences as well. I think the formula is difficult to see which ones are. Who do you trust? If you look and what kind of like what you just said before, and also what is published on the newest study from Roland Berger, which is just published September, a couple of weeks ago, showing that the trust into platforms, information, and healthcare givers varies. Okay, so which are the ones that I really trust?
Geographically, does it vary in geographies, or does it vary in disciplines?
I think
or age groups.
Age groups, yes. Well, one thing which surely is that the use of any kind of technical platforms in any sense, of course, this also the Roland Berger study shows this. The higher economic, the higher education, then the more you use it. The younger, and younger we're talking about until also into the mid-50s, by the way. This has changed a little bit, looking at myself. The very old ones maybe do a little bit less, and people who don't have educational or intellectual access to also the technical possibilities, always to think about. Even though everybody has a smartphone, but do they just use it to phone, or to do their social media platforms, or do they also use it, have enough data on the things? So this makes a difference. One thing also, the rural, which we think they don't need it, the rural community actually uses these kinds of information more than the urban use it more than the rural do. Okay, so it's funny because being more traditional, you rather use less technical, internet-based information platforms. You would think, okay, they don't have access, they're far away, it's difficult. It's the other way around, because also maybe more tech-savvy. But how to find out the which ones are the good ones? I think it's important that there is a lot of various ones here. And I think the good ones will make it. But again, how do we know about them? And this is, I think, the major issue. I think I'm pretty good on seeing what is happening, but I think I know about maybe 1% of what is really happening and to check into. And then one thing, of course, is that especially medical professionals, if you see how they work, you're interested in either working on the patient, curing, healing, whatever, or then on the scientific side, okay? But how much time then do I have to kind of check, find out, how much time do I go and browse through any kind of platforms? Mostly it's either because I see it on a conference or my peers bring it to my attention, or I'm in a platform like this maybe where I shared. or it just pops up by coincidence. And so it's difficult. I don't know the formula. I really don't know. And also for myself, we try and share knowledge as good as we can. E-doctors, for example, my telemedical clinic, we have the swarm intelligence working all the time because we have certain platforms which I validated, which is say, okay, you can use these. These are guidelines, or I don't know, certain practices or information platforms which we validated. And the other thing is that we have the community, also the doctors, even during consultations, they have a chat running in the background, say, hey, listen, what would you do about this and this and this, or do you think it's okay? And within seconds, you have somebody answering. It's kind of like this, but it's real life. Yeah. So it's needed, you know, and young doctors, not only young doctors, but they want to work in teams. They want to have a certain input. They want to be able to share, reassure, and not just be alone as maybe the 60-year-old surgeon who just thinks he does it all by himself.
Anita, you're sitting on needles. I have the feeling. Go ahead, shoot.
No, no. I would say to really understand one way. It's not the only way, because if we have platforms, they are only really restricted, not in a bad way, meaning in a bad way, to healthcare professionals. This has to be there, and it's necessary. But if for all these apps we have, for instance, in cancer, it's unbelievable. What we do is, if anyone is offering us a new tool, a new app, then we make the research before and say, okay, there is already so much out there, and we go back to our community and say, is there anything what is now on the market or is going maybe on, and does this meet your unmet needs? Does this really bring something positive what parents, patients, survivors are really missing? And if not, then we let it go.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I have a stack more of questions, but I'm sure you also do. So I would like to ask you to ask your questions. Speak up. Any questions from the audience? Please.
Anita, a question to you. Just recently I've heard that in Finland there is a very engaged and organized community of patients who are very enthusiastic about testing new solutions. Is that the same in Austria or in other countries? What is your knowledge about it? And if yes or if not, what would be the best way to get engaged with, as an entrepreneur, to get engaged with patients' communities? How to do that properly, how to do that right?
Yes, we are. I mean, Finland is not really Scandinavian, but the countries in the north are much better in this. They are very affine to technique, and as we know, the Swedish people, they are really much, it's a different kind of people or education, I would say. And healthcare system, yes, right. So in Austria, I'm not that, I'm actually sure that it's not so good, because I only know it from the cancer field, adult and children. It's not existing. On a European level, it's much better. There is a huge community in cancer, adult and children. We are very much engaged and involved to really do exactly this. To be asked to try to help the industry. We work a lot with the healthcare industry, or not so much with the healthcare with those who are responsible to make the political decisions. So health ministries, for instance. But yeah, in Austria we have to go a little bit. We have to be stronger.
Far away. More questions.
Andrea, you talked about platforms should solve problems. In your opinion, or maybe to the whole panel, you have two top problems that a platform should solve.
Sorry.
What are the two top problems a platform should solve?
Okay. Very difficult question.
Maybe you repeat the question in case the audience did not understand it. Yeah.
What are the two actual problems, or what are the two actual challenges to get people on the platforms? So more or less on the patient side and on the doctor side. I think, I mean, credibility has been a thing, or is validated. I think this is one thing, how to get this over. One thing is, don't make things complicated. This is one thing which is very important. If you see, I was saying before, doctors, nurses, don't rule those out. Doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals of all kinds, they want to work with the patient more of them, okay? Or they want to perform any kind of science, and so they don't want to spend time on platforms and have multiple ones. So one is interaction, interoperability, and integration. So if I look at just myself, I think I'm pretty tech savvy and open, but when I'm actually in my clinic, I have my electronic patient record, I maybe have one or two other things open, and that's it. And always I see sometimes, you know, time is just passing, patients are passing, it's like, oh, I wanted to look up this, I wanted to do this. You don't have the time, okay, sometimes, or it's just too clumsy. So this is one thing, make it simple, make it accessible, and communicate it. And this is one thing, also being part of a physical network, being one of the lot of doctors in my physical thing. One thing which I appreciate is I can't always join, but you know, say, listen, we have this and this panel coming up, we have this and this, join this, so we have this webinar, things like that. So it kind of catches my attention. This is one thing maybe to get them on. Patients, on the other side is everybody. This is also a certain. Is it laziness or is it habit? So what is the first thing you do? You have some kind of issue. You type it into your search engine, which is usually the one with the 2 O's, and then the ones who sell you data, yeah, and then you go in and then you look at it up, and you don't know what you see if you don't think about how CEOs work and how any kind of search engines work. Okay, so you pop up. I used to make the sport out of asking my students in my lectures, on which page will you find post-alcoholic headache when you look up headache? A couple of years ago, it was on page 38. I think probably it's on 380 now, if you look it up. Because the things that people look up is not something they know. They're looking for something, maybe, I have an issue, I have a headache, I have a thumping, I was just on the toilet, all of a sudden I have this blasting headache and stuff. So what do you look up? And what you find is, of course, you find seizures, you find intracranial bleeding, you know, all these kinds of things, okay? And so there's, oh, I got this. So they trust what they see on the common search engines, which are not validated. So how do we get people, and this is the thing, how do we get people to go onto validated platforms? And I think this is an education thing, and this should start in school. I know we have teenage kids, so they are starting, they teach this, at least in our school, how to handle platforms, internet education. So I think this is one of the most important things. So maybe to answer the second part of the question is, start with the kids. And just one last thing. If I have time, I think one of the most important educational or marketing things I would do is to write a children's book. So that when little Irene falls off her bicycle, not the first thing is that somebody calls the ambulance and then gets her to the hospital. So the first thing that happens is some pedestrian takes out his app and then starts doing the telemedical consultation or something there, and not going to the hospital because it's not necessary. Sorry, Hannah wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to the discussion, because you mentioned the search engine with the O's, and I think from an entrepreneurial background, it's one of the hardest lessons I learned with my first startup that didn't become a huge success. And this is about thinking first what people are actually looking for and optimizing what you have for that question. Because like you said, if you're on page 38, you lost. You already lost when you're on page 2. You lost when you're not in the top 3. So the question everyone that wants to build anything is first, what do people actually look for? How many people look for that? And is there a chance? And how do I get in the top 3? And it is kind of rocket science, but there are some simple basics that many people that don't know about this just completely fail in doing right.
The first 3 are adverbs, sorry, so they're paid.
So never start a startup without a search engine optimization strategy.
Well, it depends on what you do, but if you create a platform, and like you said, the easiest way to attract people on your platform is to be in the top 3. And then, yeah, okay, you can be in the top 3 paid, but then you need a lot of money to be constantly in the top 3. But if you're in the organic top 3, you get a shitload of traffic for free. And that's something you can influence. And that's also some of the doctor platforms that we know really well did that super well. And that's also how we learned that if somebody puts in dentist in 1030 Vienna or whatever, that the top 3 are the ones that people are going to click first. And if you want your platform to succeed, you got to be there. And I think that's something that many fail in making sure that they create something great. They think they have solved it, but they didn't solve the marketing piece to it.
Yeah, it all comes back to kind of putting yourself in the shoes of the customers. What are they typing into Google? That's what's going to get you up into the top 3. What are they actually typing in? What are they looking for? And often we do sort of think about like, what do we want for our business? And actually the best way to get that business in the first place is to think what are people looking for? What are they hungry for?
Yeah. I would like to add a question to Hanno. Is this the only thing that is really going across industries? Because you're in sports and we are talking about health. I mean, it's related, but it's not the same. Is this the learning that we can take along if we want to build successful platforms? Is there anything else that you can transfer, so to speak, across industries in general? But where did you learn from maybe also?
Yeah, I think that one learning that I brought from the first failed experience, or not successful experience, I would call it, is to make sure that people find you. And I think we did that a lot better now, and there is still a lot room to improve. But the second piece, and I think this is also something that was mentioned, is on how to make it easy. And if we look at the evolution of Eversports, as I said, we started with ball sports, and the way we did it was, okay, they're on pen and paper, they need to get digital, and now we create something for them to be digital. But we did never sit with them in a room and co-create how the best way to book and manage your courts digitally should work. And later, when we evolved over time and then also dedicated someone to do product work, and maybe this sounds like a terrible rookie mistake that we didn't do it that way before, but I'm quite sure that there are others out there that make the same mistake or made the same mistake. So I think the biggest learning we had was whatever you build, it's nice that you have some ideas how the solution should look like, but the ones that are actually the ones that buy it need to be in the room. They need to be involved and not at the end when you have built the prototype and then show them, hey, what do you think? You show them the first mock-ups that took you 5 minutes to draw and get your first input there and then iterate until you have something that actually is
we need
workable.
to include the patients. There we are again.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the patient if you take the doc planner example, yes, if you do the search, you need to watch them, how they look, how they use the filters, and that's the piece that the patients are using. But as for the scheduling, this needs to be so easy, otherwise the doctors are not going to use it. And we heard the exact same thing from the guys from Doc Planner that said, hey, you need to sit with them in a room, you need to watch them, you need to listen to them, because if they don't use the tool, the platform is fucking useless. Because you make one double booking or you make one booking that doesn't work, you never use the platform again.
More questions from the audience. Andrea.
It's also a question for Andrea Braga. Do you see a difference on uptake of these platforms between the private doctors and the doctors who have a Kassenvertrag?
I couldn't give you a qualified answer there, let's say. But from my personal experience, the question was between, for those who don't know, in Austria we have various groups of doctors. You have those that are privately paid. You have those who have the possibility where you're your bills will be refunded, and then you have those being actually the public system. And the question was if there's a difference on the use between the public system, doctors, the Kassenärzte, and Wahl- and Privatärzte. I definitely do think so, from what I see. Because if you think that the Kassenarzt system, which I think is terrible, because it's actually built more or less on a factory, and does anybody know what the mean confrontation time is with a Kassenarzt? It's 2.3 minutes. 2.3 minutes, okay? Which means in that time, you don't have time to be halfway economical, time to do anything else but what you have in your routine, okay? This is also why this kind of medicine will not go in depth. And I'm pretty, I will say this openly, yeah? The Wahlärzte, that's why I'm one, because I have more respect for the patient and I need certain time. I want to look up things. I maybe even want to have the time to exchange with other colleagues or maybe even over a platform, do these kind of things, upload maybe some kind of findings which I would like to discuss somewhere. And so I would say to a greater extent, the private doctors of Wahlärzte will definitely do much more of this, use it much more. Not that the Kassenärzte don't want to, but if you have 160 patients you see a day, or which you run, you don't see them, which you run into your practice, into your office a day, where will you have the time to do something like this?
Thank you.
Unfortunately.
As I'm a patient now, how far is the platform? You can read hours over every topic, but how can you interact with the doctors, and how is it to be integrated with our healthcare system, that maybe if you contact the doctor, then you get some advice, and then you will get it refunded from the Krankenkasse?
This is one thing which wasn't mentioned till now, and I didn't want to mention it until it was actually addressed. Is it's always the same question. It's always the same die Gretchenfrage. Yeah? What about the money? And one thing, not that we are greedy, but we want to survive. Okay. So one of the major things is that a lot of the tariff remuneration refunding systems in many healthcare systems. There is a little bit something in Germany, there's a little bit something in UK, there's a little bit something in the Anglo-Saxon, in the American systems, where certain things get refunded, okay, or which are actually on a tariff. But our tariffs, if you look at the tariffs in Austria, about a third of the things which are in the tariff structures of the ÖGK, for example, are things you don't do anymore, but they're still in there, okay? But then a lot of the things we do nowadays, even normal practice, are not in there. And so one thing which would make it, of course, very important is just how can this be refunded? Is there a tariff to it where I can book it? So if you talk to me, I'm very open. Whatever platform, wherever media people want to talk to me about, I'm not like many of my colleagues. If somebody sends their picture on WhatsApp, which is actually not allowed, for me, this is an informed consent. The moment he comes on this channel, I will answer on this channel, okay? Now, the question is, will I bill it or will not bill it? And if I bill it, how do I bill it? And this is a major issue. I know a lot of my colleagues say, if I don't get paid for what it is, maybe some of it is kind of like social charity, personal engagement, whatever, commitment to that. But this you can only do to a certain extent. And I have to stop it too sometimes. So this is a major issue. And I think this is healthcare politics are, I don't know, either too stubborn or too closed-minded, or there are other issues behind it or other incentives behind it not to do it. And I think this is important, because if you see, like, some platforms even create their own currencies, okay, to be able to actually interchange. And I think this is important. And to a certain point, Rutherford is right, you get what you pay for.
Anita, do you have any examples? Europe-wide, is there these gradients, so to speak?
Yeah,
that
actually there is, what I mentioned before, the European reference networks. They are now to this project, so to exchange knowledge, and not the patient should travel, the knowledge should travel. So for the virtual tumor boards, and the institution gets paid, not as if they put something on this platform and they start to exchange, because it needs sometimes an hour that the whole multidisciplinary team is there to discuss a very rare case or difficult case, then the institution gets paid. So this is what is now a little bit a better start to make it attractive, because otherwise how should they do it? And for hospital doctors, it might be easier because they do it in their They do it in their paid time, even we know that they're running out of time. Yeah, they're running out.
If they have time.
Yeah, if they have time. So.
One last question, one last chance.
We were talking about marketing and the effort we have to take with this, but we are talking about healthcare, and we didn't speak about one big gatekeeper, which is very important, especially in developing digital therapies, the Sozialversicherungen. And this is especially in Austria or in the middle Europe a big problem, because we have a regulation for medical products, and if you fulfill this, you are not refunded by the Sozialversicherung, the state insurance companies, and they don't want to talk with you. They don't want to get in touch with you because they have the fear that it will cost money. And so for an Austrian enterprise, you have to go to Germany and to be registered there and to take it the DIGA registration, and that's the only possibility to be in the market in this case.
Well, good news about here that also in Austria we're working on what of DIGA can we copy and make it better right from the beginning. Maybe do you know anything about that?
Not in detail, because every time it's addressed, we're talking. One thing which it's really and there's the no, and I haven't structured information is hard to get here. At least I don't know if you know more, but this is the problem. And one thing which is very important, which has to data security, data privacy is important. But one thing, if you look at the surveys, and I don't know anybody actually involved in data protection which is under 50 years of age. If you see also, it's also in Roland Berger, people would be much more open, actually are much more open to share their data, to get a profit out of it, to get help, than actually what regulators are trying to block for whatever reasons. And one thing which is important, you said it correctly, we have to protect the patient, not the data. We have to protect the patient's identity, not the data. And if you see, and this is an important thing, and this is what inhibits a lot of things, because in Austria, one of the first, the game killers is always, and it's usually about the third sentence, Datenschutzkonform, Datenschutz, Datenschutz. Forget about, who wants to protect data? You want to protect identities, you want to protect people, not data. And this has to stop. Then we can go this way, but this has to stop.
Thank you very much. I would like the audience, to ask the audience for a big round of applause. Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm sure you will still be around for the audience to interact. And I would like to hand over to Julia.
And the great question and valuable insights from everyone. And for the online audience that is still with us, there is now also an online opportunity for you to network with each other, and it is going to be available until midnight. So please stay and join the online networking. To do so, you have to click on the button saying People, which you can find to the very left side of your screen. And there you will have the opportunity to select whether you'd like to speak to someone specific, or you can also be randomly allocated to another participant. So for our audience here in the presence, here at TU Wien, I'm now inviting you all for drinks and snacks and networking with a great view over Vienna. And please grab your drinks and enjoy yourselves, and thank you very much for coming today.